Okay, so now we can start with the content. As you've heard, we come from a background of translation studies. We're training professional translators and interpreters at our institute, and we've had to deal with AI, I think probably even before you had to, because it has changed quite a lot at the landscape in professional translation. And so we were thinking that actually we should share our expertise in the use of MT with a group that is also concerned with this topic, and started a project where we started to train or to give language teachers at Swiss universities in the use of AI. And so we're reporting today on this project, which is about to come to an end. And we're focusing on this perspective of the trainers, because we are now all of those who train people in languages and language professions. We're also in quite a challenging, but also very interesting situation. And now I have to scroll. Okay. Softly scroll. Why is the situation challenging? Because as you've seen here, the public discourse on languages changes. Right, and there are a lot of people talking about languages now, which are either coming from a very technological perspective, or are reducing language learning a lot and making it much more simplistic as it actually is. So here you see, or maybe you should say something about this, because you were the ones who collected those titles. You see a lot of titles talking about language learning being, if it's still necessary, and asking the question, do we still need language teachers, or can we replace them by AI? So we are suddenly in a context where we need to explain what we're doing, and in a different way, and where we need to justify what we're doing. We need to show why it is important what we're doing, and we probably need to face a situation that the idea of what language is will change, right? And we will have to deal with a new view of language learning and questions that we didn't need to answer before. But being in an environment where there are a lot of headlines that are scary or overly simplistic, first we wanted to take a look at the current practices, and we have collected some data on this. So we did a survey, and that was before the advent of ChatGPT in Swiss universities. And you can see here we managed to get quite a lot of answers. We asked all people working at university, teachers, researchers, students, as well as admin staff, because we had this idea, we wanted to give interventions on MT or AI literacy for language teachers in Swiss universities. And first we wanted to know what's the current state, what are they doing, what do they already know about MT to be able to prepare these interventions. What are our results? These were data from 2021. We asked, have you ever used a machine translation system? And as you can see here, the overwhelming majority did, as well as the students, as well as the staff. Then we were interested in knowing what types of documents do you use MT for? And here again, you see they basically used it for all kinds of documents. There's some differences. Certain things are more frequent, for example, emails than others. But MT was used for quite a range of documents by many, and also, of course, already at the time for assessments and for exams by the students, as well as for the teachers. Right. What we were also interested in knowing, what do people think about the impact that MT will have on language learning? And quite reassuring, students as well as teachers actually said, it will not change the need to learn languages, but of course, different competences will be necessary, and different competences will be necessary. And to what extent will MT change language teaching? MT is another useful tool. So there was no, people were not believing that MT will replace the need to learn languages, but that the process will change, the learning process, and that MT should be integrated, or AI should be integrated, and will be a tool to use languages and to communicate multilingually. We found this quite reassuring at the time. So this contradicts what you've seen in the headlines, right? By those asked by those people who are experts and who use MT frequently. Then we asked in particular the language teachers, do you inform your students about MT? And this was in 2021. And then ChatGPT arrived in 2022. And then, of course, the whole thing changed, right? At the time, what we saw was that everybody was using MT, but no one talked about it. And so what you can see here, many people said, from language teachers, one subgroup, and the teacher said, no, we don't inform them about MT. So we always said it was a bit as the elephant in the room, it was there, but nobody talked about it. But still, language teachers were already more sensitive to this issue than other teachers. And they were also approached more frequently by students on this topic. As a reported. So these are data from before ChatGPT, and so their AI was there, but not many people talked about it. And then while we were working on this project, suddenly ChatGPT arrived, and everybody was talking about AI, and we were like, hey, we were the first to talk about it. But as the technology behind MT and AI and ChatGPT is actually in many ways quite similar, right? We could adapt our interventions and also our concept behind, because before we were talking about MT literacy and then merged into AI literacy. These are no data from our survey, but they are very interesting because this is a study from 2019, so also about neural machine translation. And they asked students how they use online translators. And what you can see here is a very diverse use for many purposes. And one thing we were at the time particularly shocked about was that they said we use it for individual words. And when you have a look at this questions, how do students use online dictionaries? That's quite similar. So they used MT in a similar way as an online dictionary, and for all of those who know a bit how AI works, how neural machine translation works, using it for individual words is actually absolutely not the case where it's most performing, right? And it's not a dictionary. There is no information that is given that is really checked. It's just the best guess out of context, and this AI works well when it has a lot of context. So they used it, they were not aware of the difference between these tools, right? And what they could well do and what they could not well do. Shall I just go on to the competence model? So this was the background we were working with at the time before ChatGPT when we developed our interventions. So we wanted to train the trainers, we wanted to, I think, empower people to integrate these tools, feel empowered to integrate these tools so that the topic could be addressed. Because what we saw was everybody was using it, no one was talking about it. And this had, as we saw in these data right now, this had the consequence that people were using the tools in a way that was not optimal. This is a bit what today is behind our idea of AI competences, and I wanted to show you this model because it shows you that AI competences are not only technological competences or computational competences, but that it's a very diverse range of competences that is needed to implement AI and to use it in an informed way. And that, of course, these aspects have been addressed before by our colleagues here. Of course, identify ethical issues, knowing how to communicate with AI, which is a very different way. We've heard this also this morning in the keynote. We need to learn how to communicate with AI, which has a very different way of functioning than the human brain. And but also just means being able to manage change. And I think here we find a lot of competences that also language teachers are very, very well equipped with. So just to work against this idea, I need to be very technologically fit or trained to be able to be someone who can manage change in the implementation of artificial intelligence.
Okay, so I'm taking over and yeah. So what we did after this survey is to try, we called it interventions. Basically, it was a lot of workshops. So we had over the last 2 years, over 30 workshops in all of Switzerland, sometimes in France even. And I think one in Austria, I can't remember, but yeah. So mainly language teachers. Our primary target audience were university language teachers, but we also had quite a lot of higher education, not higher, high school teachers who also asked us to come and talk to them. So we did that. The length of the workshop would vary between 1 hour and the longest was 8 hours. A whole day of workshopping with us was exhausting for everybody. And then the workshop were held in German, French, English. I don't think we had some in Italian, but it's the most common languages in Switzerland, and for all kind of teaching languages. So we would have Arabic, Chinese teachers, but the workshop languages would be in those 3. Yeah, and the location is quite important too. So we had, of course, a lot of online workshops. We had workshops at our university, so people would come and sit in our facilities, or we would go to their schools or universities. And the number of participants is just like the length of the workshop. We had sometimes just 5 people, and the most populated one was 73 people, which was quite hard to manage, but really fun. Okay, so this is what we did. About the contents, what did we teach? So I'll teach or train. We tried to show how NT works, neural NT, which was really difficult because it's really complicated for me to understand. So I'm still only able to explain part of this, for example. But we tried to show the difference between neural machine translation, more or less deeper, and what came before. You might remember when machine translation was not working, it was a lot of fun with all the signs that were wrong translated. So we tried to show how it works and how the human brain works when we think, when we generate text, and try and see the difference. So a bit of technical explanation. Then we talked about the issues, the weaknesses, like the bias, especially the gender bias, which is always a great reason to laugh about it. Also, the notion of machine translation is, which we have noticed is happening in with generated text already. I think most at the moment, I think most papers that are published and contain the word dive into, or delve into, something like that, which didn't happen before. So yeah, so machine translation is the language being a bit reduced to some kind of a couple of words that are mostly used, and very smooth, very clean somehow. False fluency, which is an issue because the text reads so well that it's very difficult to spot the well-known hallucinations. So if you have mistakes in hallucination and fake news and false facts, it is more difficult to spot them in a text that has been translated or produced by a machine because it reads so absolutely perfectly. And priming. So if I always read something that is translated or written by the machine, then I will start writing like the machine. So this kind of stuff. Also the ethical considerations, the ecological cost of neural machine translation and of using AI, and the legal consideration, the question about authorship and everything. So this is what we talked about in the workshops. Yeah, that's it. And then we presented the current perceptions and practices of students regarding machine translation. So the results of our survey, we had many more questions than what we showed, to help the teachers know what their students are actually doing, because it can help, or at least what they told us they were doing. And also try to see the potential and the challenges specifically for language learning. So we always tried to give an overview of the existing findings of researchers who have been doing action research, who have tried stuff in their classroom and reported on it. So we all had a list of who's been doing what and what did they try very concretely, so that to give the people stuff to try out themselves, basically. So that was it. The main goal was empowerment and agency. Yeah, 5 minutes. I will make it. So empowerment and agency.
Squeeze it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, don't need to remain on that. I think it's clear. I will be very, very short on the research design. So what we did afterwards on our research design to evaluate these workshops, because we were a whole research group, so it was about 8 people, a total, who gave all these different workshops all the time, and one of us did not. So this one was the interviewer, and she interviewed us as a group using autoethnographical methods, so that we can retrospect and reflect on the experience and on what we heard from the participants. So I have it here. And here is what we found out. First, the time is from the formal aspects was a crucial element. Most of the participants always complained they didn't have enough time for discussion and exchange. So it was really important. An hour is not enough. So if you plan to train your trainers, plan more than an hour. I can tell you that. And the solution that we implemented afterwards was that we had some kind of a flipped classroom, which means most of the contents that were stating facts or the results of the survey, we made videos out of it and we sent it before, so the people had to watch it before they came to the workshop, so that there would be more time for discussion, exchanges, and hands-on activities. And what is probably also interesting is the group dynamics is very important in those workshops. Smaller, homogeneous groups worked better for people who already knew each other. But interestingly, they would work better. It would be more efficient. Basically, the age gap. I'm very sorry to say, but it was an issue, and I don't want to generalize here, but there was the issue of age gap and digital divide. So and I think the presenter has said it very. Yeah, I don't want to spend the last year struggling with the technology that I don't have to. We had those people, and we had very young people say, okay, but I'm looking to 30 to 40 years career, so I need to get on board now. This is something that was weighing a lot in the group dynamics, basically. So I don't have a solution for that, but maybe this is something to carry in mind when you train the trainers. And the online setups usually exacerbated the issues of digital divide, of course, because if someone is already not very keen on technology and then you have to do it online, then they're not happy about it. But also because if people don't know each other, then you have like this very cool and very engaged moments where the workshop is not very fruitful. The focus points that we saw that is crucial is that unlike the probably other workshops in technologies, for example, how to use Moodle, how to use whatever technology to teach. A workshop on AI, the first question that comes in, who am I? Because if AI challenges the need to learn languages, if AI challenges me as a language teacher, if all of a sudden they say I can learn English with ChatGPT, then it is the whole self-concept of the teacher who's at stake. So it was a very disruptive moment, and it's very important, as we saw, it's very important to see that the teachers come there and they're very unsecure. They have a lot of questions, but they are existential questions. Okay, 1 minute. And they know they have to acquire new competences, but they don't know which, and there's no sign what you have to do. So it's a very difficult moment. So what we found out is that we could actually use the change management phases imagined by Richard Streich, I think based on the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of growth. And that is where we found out that our workshops were working, but not where we think, because basically our people, and we won't be able to see it here, they were, when they came to the workshop, they were at stage 3 at most. Because they had these rational acceptances. They had accepted that AI is there, it won't go anywhere, it's here, I have to do something about it. But they were not already ready to learn. So they had to get to the emotional acceptance. And this is why they all said, I need more exchange, I need more time for discussion. Because what the workshop really brought to them is the possibility to come there and rant about it and say, oh, that's awful. Who am I? Am I going to have a job? And say it out loud, because you most of the time you don't say it, you just read the headlines. And if you say it in a workshop and everybody say, yeah, oh, we're going to be out of a job, then you have said it and then you can move on and start working, learning. So this is what happened. And we even had sometimes people who were in the denial phase who had been just brought along in the workshop with by their peers or by the boss or whoever. They were like, no, but I don't need it. And it was very long way. So what my conclusion would be, or our conclusion is, it was very interesting training the trainers, but in that specific area, probably take into consideration that you can't just go and say, okay, how do we use it? What sequences do we do? What teaching materials can we make or stuff like that? Because before that, you really have to get the people to that very, very low point. And for that, you just need to let them talk. And yeah, and I will stop with that. Thank you very much.
Very well, thank you.